Hi everyone, it's Kristen. So, you're probably wondering what's going on. Well, we finally got our first X-Men character, and it's Iceman. And Iceman he's one of my favorites, honestly. He has been one of my favorite male characters, male X-Men characters. And so I'm super excited. And I tried to do my makeup like a frosted look, but honestly, especially from back there, it just looks like I'm not wearing makeup. So, good to know that anything I do like that does not show up in this form. I'm sure if I recreated this for like, in my comic book room, since it's so much closer and the light's so much better in there, you'd probably be able to tell. But anyway, so I guess I'll take a picture and so you can kind of see better what it looks like. Anyway, I was super excited. Like I have my Iceman t-shirt on, and I brought my Marvel Select Iceman that I got for my birthday last year from one of my friends, and I brought out a Marvel Legends, the AOA Age of Apocalypse version, and I also grabbed this. I couldn't find his feet because he has feet to make him, like to make him even more imposing. Like his hands, those come off. Anyway, so this was my favorite action figure growing up. So anyway, for yesterday, it was Falcon, but like I said, that's not important. And then for today, it was Captain Marvel, which we've talked about her before, and she's not important today. Like I said, today is all about Iceman. So let's see, maybe I can put this one up here so you can see him a little bit better. Yeah, you can see him a little bit better, not like a lot better. So anyway, it is interesting because this stamp of Iceman isn't even from an X-Men comic. It's from Spider-Man. So you can find this stamp in Werewolf by Night 16, April 74. Stamp also appears in Creatures on the Loose number 30, July of 74. See? Like it doesn't even appear in a X-Men book, or not on the cover of an X-Men book. It's on the cover of Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man 92, January 71. Art by John Romita Sr. And it says when Iceman attacks, but of course I'm sure it's some misunderstanding because they wouldn't really fight each other because they're friends. And of course, Spider-Man and his amazing friends wasn't around when I was growing up because that was before my time. But I found that later, and I love that show. It's so fun. I mean, of course it's super corny and hokey, but I loved that show. It's so fun. Like Iceman, Spider-Man, Firestar all living together, fighting crime. It's just a great show. So I'm gonna kind of go over Iceman's history. I'll try to make it brief, but you know me, and like I said, I got out some of my comic books to show you major events that really resonated with me. So when he first appeared, he was more like this, like almost a snowman in appearance, and this is just like a metal recreation of the first cover. Because of course, I mean, I have reprints of the first cover, but I don't have, obviously, the first issue of X-Men. So, like I said, I just thought this would be easier for you guys to see because it's so much bigger. So, and then when the original team got captured by Krakoa, when he was actually like an island, oh, Dazzler's gonna knock people over. Probably. Anyway, we'll just keep going though, because she's probably gonna knock everybody over. So when when Iceman in the original 5, because Iceman was the second recruit, Cyclops was the first, Iceman was the second, even though technically Xavier approached Jean Grey first. But anyway, he was the second like member to actually join. So after the original team got captured by Krakoa when he was actually like an island, and like it was called, I think, like the island that walks like a man or something like that. Anyway, Xavier recruited, of course, the giant size X-Men, and that was in 1975. So if we get any more X-Men, it's going to be of the original five. So I'm still really excited that there's X-Men, and I'll just keep talking even though Dazzler's in the way. So, when they were rescued and they came back, Iceman and a lot of the other members of the team quit because they, didn't see a place for themselves anymore. They were kind of irritated that Professor Xavier was able to like replace them so easily, even though they weren't being replaced. But you know what I mean. So, and then, and then he joined. He went to UCLA for college. He joined the Champions. That team didn't last very long. He got his degree in accounting because that's what his dad wanted for him. And he joined the Defenders, with Beast and Angel. And that team didn't last very long either. But after he quit being a full-time superhero, he became a full-time accountant, which compared to being a superhero, that sounds super boring. And then after the Muir Island saga, of course, when the original five came back together and formed X Factor, he was a member of that team. And I talked about this in my other video when I reviewed this guy. Loki at one point kidnapped him and messed with his powers and augmented them in order to hopefully control the frost giants. And for a while, Iceman couldn't control his powers at all. And when Cameron Hodges' anti-mutant group attacked them, they put a power dampener on him. And that belt actually helped him control his powers. So it worked out. And then it's funny because they never actually said, oh, now he can control his powers, he's good. The artist just kept kind of forgetting to draw him with the power dampening belt. So it just, it kind of just was like, oh, yeah, he gained control of his powers again at some point. Anyway, so after the Muir Island saga, he joined the X-Men again as part of Storm's Gold Team. And he was usually pictured like this. Basically just, in ice form. And it was actually, at this point, his body wasn't made out of ice. It was like a coating of ice over himself. So he always just looked like a man, covered in ice. It wasn't until, 10 issues later when Colossus's brother, Mikhail, actually messed with his powers, that he realized that he could he could turn his body into actual ice. Because before it was just a coating of ice. And then Mikhail just was like, hey, you're not really living up to your potential. You can actually do this instead. So, and this is just an example. Oh man, I marked the page and then I accidentally unmarked it. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is an example of him actually using his powers more to a greater extent. See, you can see that he's added bulk to himself using his ice powers. Because he never did that before. Like I said, his powers mostly were just like a coating of ice over himself. And it wasn't really, he wasn't made of ice. It was just a coating of like ice armor, so to speak. And this is another example of him using his powers, starting to use his powers to their greater potential. Like I said, I thought that image was really cool. It shows how far he's come from when he was just, you know, a snowman, basically, to this, using his powers more effectively. And then what happened is, okay, Emma Frost, she had a team of mutants, young mutants called Hellions, and they were attacked by Trevor Fitzroy and Sentinels, and they pretty much all perished. And Emma went into a coma, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of rushing through this, but I'm trying to like hit all the main Iceman highlights, and you know how unconcise I am. So anyway, she was in a coma from that point, and then she woke up and she actually took control of Iceman's body. And here Warren and Storm talk about how she is using her power, Iceman's powers, in a way that he never has before. Like she froze this whole river in ice to stop them from following her. Like, and so this, a couple of issues later, Iceman confronts Emma and says, hey, I want to know how you did that. I want to know how you used your powers better than I did. And she's like, is that what you want? You want to be powerful. You want to, see, what does she say? You want power. You want to be dangerous, to be in control. You want the respect you'll only get when you stop being the ineffectual clown that you are. Say that you want those things. And he's like, yes, I want those things. You know, teach me how you did that. And she's like, you need to figure that out by yourself. You know, if this, me taking over your body and using your powers more effectively than you ever have, despite all your training, if that makes you drive forward, great. If it doesn't, you know, or if it drives you crazy, like, I don't care one way or the other. So basically she would not help him. So he kind of at some point went to Storm and said, hey, we have similar powers. Will you, you know, tutor me, so to speak? So in this, this is one of my favorite issues ever. Because he goes with Rogue to visit his family. And he talks about his dad in this. And look what he made with his powers. Like, I love this. It's so cool. It's a huge, ice castle. Instead of a sand castle, it's an ice castle. And here he talks about his dad and, you know, how he would use his powers and be like, Dad, what do you think? And his dad's like, you know, that's not going to, you know, a man doesn't get anywhere in this world by dreaming, boy, by making castles in the sand. So, you know, basically he doesn't have the greatest relationship with his dad. They're kind of estranged. So they pull up to his parents' house, and basically his mom is the peacemaker. She's trying to make peace, and his dad's like, you're late. You're like an hour late. And basically, his dad is not a nice person. His dad's kind of a bigot. He talks about how he hoped one day that he would bring home a normal girl, and he even went as far to say that, let's see, guess we should be glad that you didn't bring that Topol girl around. Her name's Opal. She's Asian. So straight up, his dad is a bigot. And Rogue, which this is really awesome of her, actually calls him out on this. Like, he doesn't like the fact that Bobby is a mutant. He doesn't like the fact that, you know, Bobby dates mutants, girls, and doesn't. Of course, this was before he like came out as gay. But anyway, his dad doesn't like the fact that he dated an Asian girl. Doesn't like the fact that he brought home Rogue, even though they're not dating, and she's a mutant. But yeah, Rogue calls him out on you know basically she said Bobby said a lot of great things about you, but he never said that you were a bigot. So I'm glad that she, called him out on that. He said that you were honest, man, a hard worker. Oh, like I said, I knew Dazzler would knock Iceman over at some point. A veteran and a loving husband. And she said he never, and there goes the other one. He never mentioned that you were a bigot. And then basically they both need a change of pace. After Rogue kissed Gambit when they thought the world was ending, due to the mistake Legion made, basically the Age of Apocalypse happened. So they go on a road trip, which I also love these issues because it's just, like I said, just kind of fun, and they're outside of the Institute. They're not mutants, they're just friends, like on a road trip. So he is kind of trying to figure out himself after Emma used his powers, better than he ever has. And she's trying to figure out herself and what's going on with, because she has all these thoughts of Gambit in her head. And she is, confused. She doesn't know what's going on. Of course, I'm sure you guys know what happened. The whole secret came out that he was responsible for leading the Marauders into the Morlock tunnels for Mr. Sinister, and that that's when the Marauders massacred the Morlocks. So, and basically on this road trip, she is following Gambit. Like Gambit is his essence is still inside of her, kind of guiding her to where she's going, but she's not sure why she's going there and what's going on. And Bobby keeps seeing Emma everywhere because, like I said, he's kind of been driven crazy by the fact that she used his powers better than he ever did. And then Gambit wakes up from his coma. She calls the Institute, talks to Gambit, and basically tells him, hey, I just need more time. I just need you to leave me alone, sort of thing. I just need time away. But Gambit doesn't really listen and follows them because he kind of knows where she's going, because she's like, we're trying to make it to Seattle before dark, and something happened in Seattle, so Gambit knows exactly where she's going. And this is when Gambit has found them, and Rogue is kind of just going a little bit crazy because she's messed up in head, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know why she's having these feelings or what's going on. But also, Iceman basically calls her out and says, you need to deal with this. And she says, oh, you've been dealing with stuff, the way you dealt with your dad, or what Emma Frost did to your mind, and how she used your powers better than, you ever did. And he's like, that's fair, but, and so basically Rogue takes off, and she's like, I just need time to myself, just alone. So anyway, like I said, quickly, that's basically, of course, Rogue is my favorite, but Iceman, those are some of the issues that I fell in love with him through growing up and reading those. And then we have this one, which when I saw this, I was like, holy cow, what is going to happen? So this is Onslaught's Herald, and this is what he's done to Iceman. You can see he has a hole, a huge hole in his actual chest. So, yeah. And Storm and Wolverine and, they're all trying to, and Cyclops are all freaking out because they don't know what to do. And when Bobby wakes up, he's freaking out because he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what happened, what will happen if he shifts back into human form. Will he, have a huge hole, missing? And of course, in human form, you can't have a huge hole in your side. So he's freaking out. So he goes and confronts Emma and basically is like, look what happened to me. Like, you used your power, you used my powers. You had this happen to you. How did you, like, how did you deal with it? Like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? And she actually sees, how upset he is. The kind of course, they fight for a little while because she's still like, I don't care. You need to figure this out on your own. But of course, he is desperate. He doesn't know, what's going on. He doesn't know how to fix this. And she's basically just pushing him to change back. And he's like, but I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen. And she's like, what? You just, like, you need to own your powers. You need to take control. You need to try. And so he eventually, like, at her pushing, he does change into human form. And he is whole. So, that was a really good issue. Uncanny X-Men 331. And then this one, you can see the Wizard magazine. I've done a couple of those magazines because they're just fun to look at. It says Winter 5 Wizard 1996 Fan Awards. So this actually, what Rogue said to Bobby's dad and what Bobby has said to Bobby's dad, like all through the years, actually kind of finally caught up with him. And when he discovered that Galen or Creed was going after mutants, and he stood up for mutants, and he said, basically, but they're not just mutants. They're, they're brothers, they're sisters, they're mothers, they're husbands. They're part of families. You can't just go after them. That's not right. And when Gambit asked him, why'd you do it? And he says, Creed was threatening my family, a lot of families. It isn't right. Because Creed's goons beat him up for speaking out against Creed. And so this is when Bobby left the X-Men to go take care of his dad. And then I love when they're like this because you demanded it, Iceman returns. So this was during Operation Zero Tolerance. I did this series on my channel because the X-Men 97 covered this storyline. And so he sees on TV about, Operation Zero Tolerance, and he tells his dad, I have to go. And his dad says, I understand, son. Let me see if I can find that exact place. Okay. Well, anyway, I didn't mark it, so, but yeah, this is the issue he returns in. And so, now, wow, okay. Now I'm just going to summarize stuff because I am running, like, way over, which I'm not surprised by. Because it's Iceman, I was just super excited that we finally get an X-Men character in this stamp series of first one. So almost halfway through the year, we finally got one. So, anyway, he keeps working on his powers and they keep evolving. And of course, most of you know now that he's an Omega level mutant, which last time I counted, there was like 30-ish. Can't remember exactly. Professor Xavier, who was only named recently, Jean Grey, Proteus, Magneto, Storm, Franklin Richards, Exodus. I'm not going to list all 30, but anyway. So he's a Omega level mutant. That means the potential of his powers has not been realized, Like, they don't know what the limit is to his powers. So, anyway, he, in a fight with Black Tom Cassidy and a bunch of other, supervillains, he actually was shattered completely to where only his head remained. And he was able to reform himself from just his head being there. But at the cost of he couldn't change into his human form. So he became like kind of bitter and depressed for a while because, you know, he was stuck in his ice form the whole time. He couldn't change. So yeah, he became kind of bitter. And it kind of makes me think of when, Kitty was injured during fighting the Marauders, and she became intangible, and she couldn't make herself into a solid state. So she was kind of existed as a ghost for a little while. So, and then Iceman, when he joined Rogue's team and they were fighting Children of the Vault, he basically was completely destroyed, like kind of vaporized, and he managed to pull himself back together, like through like the molecules. So, I mean, that's a pretty handy power to have. I mean, so basically, he can't die. And that's when, yeah, Mystique was part of the team, and they had like a brief romance, which was weird, honestly, like very weird, like ew, gross. Um, but the whole thing was she was just using him and spying and trying to find out more information about Destiny's diaries because they were trying to, her with the Marauders were trying to um, find out all they could about the future, including, Destiny's diaries and going to all the mutants with, there were precogs and basically trying to gather all the information that they could and keep it from everyone else. And he also, Iceman, during that time on the team, he actually had made it where Sunfire couldn't use his powers at all. Like I don't know the technical term for it, but he like stopped molecules or slowed them down enough to where Sunfire couldn't even access his powers. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know the technical term for it, but that was pretty cool. So, I mean, it kind of feels like, so who would win in a fight? I feel like Iceman would win over Human Torch, considering he was able to stop Sunfire from even accessing his powers. Just saying. And then in San Francisco, when they were, Utopia, one of the cool things that Iceman was involved with is he was actually blessed by a priest. Like, he himself was blessed as holy water, so he used his powers to eradicate all the vampires that were invading Utopia, which I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, so I'm sure that would come in handy again if he ever needed that. And then from when Scott and Wolverine both opened up like their own schools, Bobby went to the Jean Grey school for higher learning, and he was kind of like the bookkeeper. But when the Terrigen mist was threatening, all the mutants on Earth because it was making the atmosphere inhospitable for mutants, he joined Storm's team and he got mutants to safety because the Jean Grey school was transported into limbo because they couldn't exist on Earth at that point. And then when Medusa dispersed the cloud of mist, then they transported the Jean Grey school back and it ended up in Central Park. So anyway, oh, and like one other thing was during Astonishing X-Men, like Dark Beast implanted him with like a death seed, and he kind of went crazy and tried to freeze the entire planet and like kidnapped all of his ex-girlfriends randomly and almost, killed his dad, which, yeah, that's not good. And basically did things with his powers that he never had done before, never thought he could do. Like a cool thing about him is he can form like ice golems. Like they are kind of like they can be as strong as Hulk or as big as Hulk in size and stature, and kind of have that same level of Hulk intelligence when he, the base Hulk when he's not intelligent. And so they're like sentient and they can actually like operate independently from him. So that's really cool. Let's see what else. Oh, I wasn't a huge fan of the most recent like Iceman miniseries because it was kind of all about his parents and how they were like against him being immune and you know basically his dad reverting back to his bigoted ways of being like anti-mutant, and he was scared to tell them he was gay because he was afraid they'd be against him being gay as well, which, like I said, I didn't like that because I thought we had settled this, like, all the way back in, like, the 90s. Like, I thought we were past this, so I feel like the writers kind of were just digging up stuff just to make up a story, which, like I said, I wasn't a fan of. I get it. They, wanted to make, because him coming out as gay was fairly new, at that time. They wanted to see what that would have been like to go through with his parents, being gay, both gay and immune. So I get that, but at the same time, like I said, I wasn't a fan of that story because it just made, like reverted his dad back to how he used to be, like super bigoted, like, I hate everyone. I hate everyone that's involved with mutants, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, I just wasn't a fan, but I get what they're trying to do. So anyway, this video has gone on way long enough. I mean, like I said, I even cut out parts of Iceman because I was trying to just hit all the highlights. So I probably missed some stuff, but I was just trying to, like I said, hit all the highlights so this wouldn't be like hours long. But anyway, so I don't know if you can tell, but I was really excited that he got his own stamp and that we actually got finally an X-Men character. And since this stamp series was from the I feel like they did it in 1975, like put it out in 1975 because they reference comic books from like 73, 74 where you could find the stamps. I don't think we're going to see any of the new X-Men, the giant size X-Men. So, no Wolverine, no Storm, but that's okay. At least we actually finally got some X-Men. And Iceman was the first one. So that's really cool. So anyway, like I said, I'm sad the makeup was a fail, but I'll take a picture and, so you can see it closer. And now I know that that doesn't work at this distance. And, yeah. So I hope you will join me in the future for more videos. And until then, bye.